Hi there everyone, my name's Wayne, I'm the Armchair Red and welcome to my channel. So on today's episode of You'll Never Talk Alone, I thought I'd delve into the subject of, so who is Ruben Amorim? Now as you know, Jurgen Klopp's going to be leaving Liverpool at the end of the season. And there's been a lot of conjecture in terms of who's going to be taking over from Klopp. And over the recent weeks, obviously Xabi Alonso has been the preferred candidate, or if you are to believe the media, has been the preferred candidate for Liverpool. Now, during the week, Alonso announced that he had committed his future to Bayer Leverkusen, which means that although me personally wanting Alonso in, sort of takes that option out of the window now for Liverpool. Now, initially I was hoping it was a little bit of a smokescreen. I was hoping Alonso was saying, look, I'm not interested in the role because he was wanting to put his full focus into taking Leverkusen to the Bundesliga this season, or the Bundesliga title this season. But the more I hear, the more I think there's credibility in this. So for now, I've ruled Alonso out of the race for Liverpool. I think a lot of the want and the need from the media, as well as the Liverpool community, was around, firstly, what he's done in the Bundesliga this season. I think Leverkusen are nailed on to win the Bundesliga this season and break that stronghold that Bayern Munich has had over the title. Excuse me. But secondly, I also think it's because Alonso was such a fan favourite while he was at Liverpool. So I think taking that out of the equation, in my video I made earlier when I heard Klopp was leaving, I always asked the question, is this maybe a year too early for Alonso? And if I see the way it's working out, that might actually be true, because I think Alonso's true want is to actually manage Real Madrid. And I think he will get that opportunity at the end of next season when Carlo Ancelotti steps down. So Alonso's out of the race, and there's a new man in town, or there's a new name in town, and that name is Ruben Amorim. So I must admit, I didn't know too much about Ruben Amorim. I know his sporting team knocked Arsenal out of Europe last year, but besides that, I didn't know too much about him. So what I decided to do was, look, if this is the man for the job, I want to get an idea of who he is, what he's all about, and whether he'd be the right fit for Liverpool. So I've made lots of notes over here, and after I've done my homework, I am pretty much convinced that this is the man for Liverpool. So let's start off. Ruben Amorim is 39 years old, so he's really, really young. Relatively, when you look at managers in the football world at the moment, and especially really good managers. But Xabi Alonso is only 42, so there's a bit of a similarity over there. And you'll see as I go through my analysis, there are clear similarities between Ruben Amorim, Jurgen Klopp, and Xabi Alonso in terms of what they've done and how they operate. So like I said, he's 39 years old. He retired from football in 2017, so it was the same year that Xabi Alonso retired. And he had a pretty decent playing career. He was a midfielder in the Portuguese league. He spent most of his time playing for Benfica and for Braga. During his time as a player, he won 11 major trophies. And he ended up retiring at the age of 32. He spent the next 2 years getting his coaching badges. Ironically, one of those 2 years that he was, after he had retired, he was actually banned for a year, because he was actually giving instructions from the sideline in the Portuguese third league, and he hadn't had his credentials yet. So during that time, he spent the time getting his coaching badges, and in 2019, he took over the Braga reserve team. And he was doing a reasonably good job in the Braga reserve team, and then 3 months later, Braga sacked their first team coach, Zampinto, I'm led to believe his name was. So he took over. After 3 months with the reserve team, he took over the Braga first team. And 3 weeks later, Braga won their first piece of silverware, beating Porto in the Domestic League Cup final. So 3 months in the job, 3 weeks in the job, and he pretty much has his first piece of silverware as a manager. So His Braga stint only lasted 3 months, and it wasn't through a lack of achievements. In his 11 games that he was in charge, Braga won 10 and drew 1. And during that stint, they beat Sporting Lisbon, he beat Benfica, and he beat Porto. So he was doing really well. And this garnered the attention of some of the bigger clubs. And one of those bigger clubs was Sporting Lisbon. So 3 months into his stint at Braga, Sporting basically bought him out. He had a release clause in his contract, and they ended up paying 10 million euros for him to become the Sporting Lisbon manager. Now, 10 million euros for a manager turns out to be the third highest amount ever paid for a manager. So that investment started paying off immediately for Sporting. In his first game in charge, he beat his former club Braga 7-1. So probably a little bit of a bittersweet experience for Amorim, because I know he was worshipped while he was at Braga as well, both as a player and a coach, even though it was a short stint as a coach. But then he went on to do the unthinkable. In his first full season, he went and won the league in Portugal, breaking a near 20-year domination of the league by both Porto and Benfica. Very similar to what Xabi Alonso is doing at Bayer Leverkusen at the moment, breaking the stronghold that Bayern Munich had in the Bundesliga. So he went on, he won the league. Not only did he win the league, but he also won his second domestic cup. So it was a really awesome first full season in charge for Ruben Amorim. In his second season in charge, which was the 21-22 season, they ended second in the league. But again, he won another domestic cup, being his third piece of silverware as a manager. The 22-23 season, a lot like Liverpool, was very disappointing for Sporting. They only ended fourth in the league, and they didn't win any silverware. So if you remember, Liverpool had a very disappointing season that year as well. We ended fifth. We lost out on Champions League football. We were forced, as you can see this year, playing in the Europa League. So 22-23 was really disappointing. But then came the bounce back year, very much like Liverpool are experiencing now. Sporting are currently top of the league. They are 1 point ahead of Benfica and a big 7 points ahead of Porto at the moment. They are also in their running at the moment, and there's a very good chance they're going to end up winning the domestic league again for the second time in 20 years. So a very similar narrative to what Xabi Alonso is doing at Leverkusen at the moment. They are very likely, or odds on, or definitely going to win the Bundesliga this season. And then, as you know, Liverpool are still in the title race at the moment with the likes of Man City and Arsenal. It's still very close. So there are a lot of similarities in terms of what Amorim is currently doing at Sporting to what Alonso is doing at Leverkusen and what Klopp did at Liverpool. So ultimately, he was brought in and tasked with bringing a team that was previously one of the big three in the Portuguese league and moving them back to the top table of Portuguese football. And he's pretty much achieved that. Does that not sound very similar to what Klopp was tasked with when he came into Liverpool? Turning doubters into believers, taking Liverpool back to the top echelon of Premier League football, which he has also achieved. So Amorim, the more I hear about him, the more impressed I am. Like I said, I didn't know a lot about him before I started doing my homework, and the more I read, the more I think to myself, this is the man for Liverpool. So he has achieved all of this despite losing key players in his team. So it sounds like Sporting became a bit of a selling club. They were forced to, because from their financial resources point of view, they couldn't really compete with the likes of Benfica and Porto. Very similar to Liverpool in the Premier League. You know, we can't really compete financially with the likes of Man Cities and the Chelseas of the world, or even the Man Uniteds. And you look at Xabi Alonso in the Bundesliga, Leverkusen by far cannot compete with the likes of Bayern Munich when it comes to financial strength. So he did all of this despite losing key players, which they were forced to sell. So listen to some of these key players. So we got Mateus Nunes, who moved from Sporting to Wolves and has subsequently moved on to Man City. There's Nuno Mendes, who moved on to Paris Saint-Germain. We saw him in action against Man City Paris Saint-Germain up against Barcelona in midweek. Paulinho, who as we know now plays for Fulham, and Liverpool were credited with an interest, as well as Bayern Munich. Pedro Porro, who now plays for Spurs, and Manuel Ugarte, who also made the move from Sporting Lisbon to PSG last season. So he's had to do all of this and continue the momentum, even though he has been forced to deal with the loss of all of these key players. And he did this by focusing on two key things. And this is pretty much what Klopp has done in his reign at Liverpool. And those two key things were youth development and very shrewd business in the transfer window. So some of the youth that he has brought through at Sporting are the likes of Diamande, Victor Gyorques, and Ignacio. Ignacio, funny enough, has been linked to a lot of the top Premier League teams during the last transfer window, and definitely he will be linked this transfer window as well. He's got a 43 million euro release clause, and if Amorim had to come to Liverpool, that probably should be one of the players that come along with him. But if you look at what he did there, shrewd business in the transfer window, youth development, very much like Klopp. Klopp's youth development, think of the players that have come through in his time. Trent Alexander, Andy Robertson. You look more recently, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, Jarrell Quansah, Connor Bradley. The list just carries on. And then in terms of shrewd business in the transfer window, remember, Andy Robertson only cost us £4 million when we signed him from Hull City. Mohamed Salah, for all of the records that he's broken, only cost Liverpool £36 million. You look at Mane cost us £30 million. You look at I'm trying to think of some of the other guys now. My mind's all over the show, but Van Dijk, when he came in, they spoke about a massive amount of money you spending on a defender, and he turned out to be the best defender in the world. The same can be said for Alisson. You look at McAllister that we've brought in this season, an absolute bargain when you look at what some of his Brighton teammates have gone for. So very similar theme in terms of what Amorim has been forced to do at Sporting Lisbon and what Klopp has been forced to do and achieve at Liverpool. So how does Amorim play? So his setup is basically a 3-4-3, and he has put this setup on the field at every club he's been at so far. Liverpool, as you know, play a 4-3-3, so it's a bit of a different formation. It doesn't mean he can't play with a 4-3-3, and I'm also convinced that with time, Liverpool could potentially play with a 3-4-3. But his style of play is very similar to Liverpool. So it's high intensity, possession-based football with a focus on winning the ball back up the pitch, which is Jurgen Klopp's current Liverpool in a nutshell. He also focuses on a very strong defence and a big threat in transition. So Liverpool's defence hasn't been great of late, but when you think maybe a season or two ago when Van Dijk was at the top of his game, Liverpool were not conceding many goals. If you look at Sporting Lisbon at the moment, their XG for goals against is the lowest in the Portuguese league, which means he builds his play on a strong defense. And then think about Liverpool as well, threat in transition. How many times have we hit on the counter-attack? How many times have we scored goals off opposition set pieces, whether they be free kicks or corners? So a very similar style of play currently being driven by Amorim at Sporting Lisbon as what Jurgen Klopp plays at Liverpool. The Liverpool players, in my view, are already used to this style of play, and they are probably technically better than the current Sporting squad. So Amorim would be walking into a setup where the players are more or less used to the style of play, what's expected of them. The formation might be slightly different, but from a technicality point of view and a skill in terms of the squad he's going to be taking over, potentially, this is head and shoulders above his current sporting team. So very exciting from that point of view. And if you have a look at this, the similarities are actually scary between what he's currently doing, the way he operates, his style of play, and you compare that to the likes of Klopp at Liverpool, what he was brought in to do, what he's achieved, how he's ended up achieving it, and also very similar to Xabi Alonso at Leverkusen. So if I look at this, we said whoever comes in, and firstly, you don't take over from Klopp, because in my view, no one can take over from Klopp. He is the best manager in the world. But you get an opportunity to come into Liverpool, assume Klopp's role, and potentially build your own dynasty at Liverpool, your own legacy. And I think Amorim has the perfect opportunity to do that. What's made Klopp successful at Liverpool is everyone has bought into Klopp. The fan base, the players, the media. I mean, I'm convinced there are players that come to Liverpool not because it's Liverpool, but because Jurgen Klopp is there. And from what I'm led to believe, Amorim is a very good communicator as well, very good with the fan base, very good with the media, and also he's a lot younger, so there's not really that father figure aspect to the way he manages his players, but he's got a very much down in the trenches with his players mentality, so he gets down there, he gets his hands dirty, and that's what gets him the buy-in from his current squad. And when you think about what has driven the success for Jurgen Klopp, for example, at Liverpool, and what makes him such a good manager, is the fact that Klopp was able to do that as well. The fan base absolutely love him, the players absolutely love him, and the media, majority of the time, absolutely love him. So, where I had my heart set on having Alonso come in and manage Liverpool, it might have been that little bit of nostalgia in terms of being a former player, looking at what he's currently doing. You then look at Amorim. He might not be the big name everyone was expecting, but think about some of the previous Portuguese managers that have come into the Premier League. And one stands out, obviously, Jose Mourinho. And don't look at Jose Mourinho now, because I think the way the role of manager in football has evolved, I think it's left Mourinho behind. But when he came into the Premier League, he was Porto manager, a Porto manager that knocked Man United out of the European Cup back in the day. He came in to manage Chelsea, and he was something different. He was the new type of manager. He was the special one. And although the role has evolved, Amorim is that new evolved manager. Could he come in and do something similar to what Mourinho did when he came into the league? Look, it still has to be seen. But from what I've read, and from the little bit of research that I've done, and from some of the stuff I've seen in the media, this is the man that has to take over from Jurgen Klopp, or assume his role. I don't think Roberto De Zerbi is the man, although he has Premier League experience. And like I said, I would have loved Alonso to come in, but I did have that hesitation back in my mind that was it potentially a year too early. We all know what happens to teams that win leagues, and especially teams that are not necessarily the big teams that win the league, is you win the league and the next season you lose half of your squad because all the other big teams in the league end up buying your players, and you end up having to go through a rebuild again. We saw that when Leicester won the league out of nowhere, and then suddenly they lost half their squad. I could potentially see that happen to Xabi Alonso next season with Bayer Leverkusen. I don't wish it up on him, but the reality is that's what happens. So this might have been Alonso's one and only opportunity to get to Liverpool. He has turned it down. Fair enough to him. I also have to commend his loyalty, if I can put it that way, because he has a project. He set his mind to the project, and he wants to continue that currently successful project that he has at Leverkusen. So in a way, I respect him for that. But also, I think it would be a good ending for all involved then, because Alonso gets to continue fulfilling his dream and potentially move on to Real Madrid. He is Spanish after all. But then it also opens up opportunity for managers who were not necessarily considered as highly at the time. And Ruben Amorim is one of them. So Liverpool, as you know, have got a very data-based recruitment system when it comes to their players. And I would imagine they're going to be following a similar database mindset when it comes to appointing a new manager. And when Klopp announced he was leaving, there was a study done on potential replacements, and the study looked at style of play, it looked at youth development, it looked at general performance characteristics of what makes a currently good football manager. And the irony back then is everyone was harping on about Alonso and Nagelsmann and the like, but Amorim actually ended the results of that assessment, had Amorim miles above any other manager in that shortlist for the Liverpool job. And perhaps we probably should have started taking more notice back then. But the more I learn about the man, the more I see what he does, the more I see his career path, the more I see his ambition, the more I see how he has had to operate almost in a mirror image in the Portuguese league to what Jurgen Klopp has had to do in the Premier League. Excuse me. I'm absolutely convinced this is the man for the job. And I hope the recent rumors are true. I hope we have in fact made contact with him. There was rumors of a 3-year contract that was offered to him. I'm also led to believe he has a buyout clause. So if we have to bring Amorim in, he's going to cost some money. I believe the current buyout clause is 30 million euros. But I'm also led to believe that he has a gentleman's agreement with Sporting that if a big club does come along and want his services, that they'd be prepared to listen to offers in the region of 15 to 20 million. So if Liverpool are serious about Klopp's replacement being able to continue the project and be there long term, we don't want short term managers. We've seen what's happened to Chelsea. We've seen what's happened to Man United. We need a project, very much like Arsenal have put their faith in Mikel Arteta. I think Liverpool should put their faith in Ruben Amorim, give him some time, and just like Sporting have reaped the benefits of taking a chance on a relative unknown, I do believe it will pay off for Liverpool in the long run. It might even pay off sooner. I mean, he's taking over a really, really talented squad, a squad that has gone through 2 rebuilds and is now busy with a 3rd, and very successful rebuilds at that. You look at the front line, you look at the midfield that Klopp did now in the transfer window. It's not completely finished yet, but it's really, really good. And you look at what he's currently doing in the back line with the likes of Conor Bradley and Jarell Quansah. You're taking over a relatively young, extremely talented team that is already competing for the title in England. Take a manager that is probably, along with Alonso now, the new lead of the new generation of football managers, and you have got by default a recipe for success. So those are my thoughts. I just wanted to share some of my views around Amorim and tell you a little bit more about him, because I mean I'm a diehard Liverpool fan, and I didn't know a lot about the man. So I hope what I've shared with you today is of benefit to you. It's very interesting. It does change my perception on who I think should manage Liverpool, and I do think Ruben Amorim is the man. So let me know your thoughts. Drop a comment and tell me whether you think Ruben Amorim is the man for Liverpool. If you like what you've heard today, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We're going on a bit of a journey on this channel. I'm up to 58 subscribers now, so I'm really chuffed. I'd like to push that number up even further, but more importantly, it's about enjoying the journey as we go along. So please do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and everyone listening, you must please look after yourselves. Armchair Red, out.